I'm glad to have you along. President Obama is barely a year into his second term, but for a new Fox News poll, we're going to look at the very early frontrunners on who could replace him. And keep in mind, nobody so far has publicly said that they are running for the White House. For the GOP, a very large field of possible candidates. Among them holding a slim lead is New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. But these numbers are close, followed closely by former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan, who, of course, ran for vice president last time around. And for the Democrats, the field not so competitive. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton already the runaway favorite in her party with a whopping 68% in the survey. Vice President Joe Biden finished a very distant second, almost a fraction of that number, followed by Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. For more on this, let's bring in Mark Tapscott, executive editor for the Washington Examiner. Good to see you this morning, Mark. It is
good. Happy almost New Year's.
I know, right? Just a few days. It is tighter among the Republicans. Why?
Because there's so many possibilities. The Republicans really have the treasure chest of possible candidates and ways that they can go. I think if I were a Republican campaign manager, I probably would be feeling like, you know, the world is my top because I have so many choices out there.
What are the potential candidates doing that's already getting voters' attention? Because the survey, when you look at those numbers, they already have some pretty strong ideas about how they feel.
Well, you know, we have such an intensive media culture now with the internet and everything else that I think the public understanding of where candidates are coming from develops and advances much more quickly than it did even 10 years ago. And I think because of that, I guarantee you there's a tendency to dismiss early polls because it's so far out. But the people who will be making decisions about where these campaigns go are looking at them very closely now because they're baseline polls. And they tell them, for example, who are we going to have to make decisions about how we attack them? How are we going to go after particular voter segments? That analysis is beginning now with this kind of poll, this early poll.
Well, do you think that any of these candidates or potential candidates are popular enough to help out their fellow Republicans win in 2014 midterms? I mean, I've even heard Democrats say there's a chance that they could lose the House. So do you see any of these potential candidates standing next to some of those members of Congress?
You know, that the one thing that it is too early to say right now is who's going to be able to help who, because the odds are very good that things are going to be so jumbled over and over again in the coming months that that's probably one of the questions that it is premature. On the Democratic side, I think with Hillary Clinton, she has two glass jaws. The first one being the fact that she's the grandmother of Obamacare, and she's going to be running in the worst possible year to be running as the grandmother of Obamacare. And Benghazi. She's going to discover next year what the difference is that is made by what happened there.
We'll stay on the Democrats since you've gotten us there and the monster lead that Hillary Clinton has in the poll. Is it like pro ball where you can have a lead that's just too early, you peak too early?
Well, politics and pro football are very, very much alike in the sense that you never know until all of the votes or all of the scores are counted who's going to actually win it. But the one thing that you can say about Hillary Clinton is that she has very high negatives. She's always had very high negatives. And she's got these problems that are very difficult to overcome, such as being the grandmother of Obamacare. And we saw in 2008 just how vulnerable she is with the fact that Barack Obama came from nowhere and beat her.
You know, you talk about Obamacare, and of course, you know, the nation will remember she and her husband, former President Bill Clinton, you know, had that as something that they wanted to get done. They didn't call it that. It had a different name. The Affordable Care Act now, slash Obamacare, yes, Hillary Care in some circles, is getting some disturbing criticism on a new front today, and you'll wonder if this becomes of the fodder for Republicans to play with going forward. But right now, it's affecting everybody else. Doctors who say insurance companies may be forced to pay them less money, Mark, for their services so that they can keep the cost of these new plans under Obamacare down. If the doctors don't earn what they want from these insurance companies, what could happen?
Well, the great Achilles heel of Obamacare and Medicaid, and indeed I think any government-run health care system, is precisely this area where somebody And with the government, it's going to be a bureaucrat, has to make a decision about who gets paid how much. And doctors, we talked with doctors all over the country as part of our recent investigative survey of how many doctors are dropping out or refusing to participate in it. Doctors all over the country, they are saying, you know, we can't afford to participate in these programs. And that's going to be a big, big problem for millions of people next year.
You know, also today, reports that even as President Obama's health care insurance website it's limping along back to recovery. It was overloaded and had some problems already this week, but they say it's doing better. The same contractor who set up that huge website, Mark, set up some others in state-run website instances, and now those states are having difficulties, and in at least 2 states they're saying, you know what, we're not going to pay for this mess until you guys fix it.
You know, the Washington Examiner, our Richard Pollack, reported on CGI, that's the company we're talking about, reported on their tremendously bad record of performance as a government contractor about 2 months ago. And you look at what they did before they got this contract and all the mistakes they made and all the contracts that they had canceled because they couldn't perform them. One of the great mysteries is, why did CGI get the main contract to build healthcare.gov? And we still don't know the answer to that question.
You know, what Massachusetts and Vermont are talking about doing that you're alluding to is just not paying the bills of the CGI invoices that are coming in until they fix the problems, because they really need to recoup some of those tax dollars that people have put into those websites.
Well, also complicating that particular situation is of course, the low number of people enrolling at this point. There's no way to know whether the system is going to be financially self-sustaining. The odds are it's not going to be, and that forces government officials now to start thinking, where are we going to find the money to pay for this stuff? The contractor is one of the first places they look.
You know, just to bring it back full circle to the politics of all of this, when you talk about these types of problems, people will say, well, there probably were some unintended consequences for some of the things that went rolling along in Obamacare. Did the White House, did the administration foresee any of these problems? You'll wonder if people will hold them accountable regardless.
You know, Harris, if you look in the dictionary for the definition of government program, right beside the definition is the phrase unintended consequences. They're always there. They're always much worse than anybody thinks.
Oh my.
And they're always much worse than the politicians who promise they won't be there.
And they sometimes cost people their jobs.
Absolutely.
Mark Tapscott, thank you so much. Happy holidays to you.
You too, Harris.